I know some of you, I don't know others of you, so that's exciting. It's fun. Let's see, it's 2 o'clock on the dot. I'm gonna get started to respect all of your time. This will be interactive, so there will be a good bit of time that you can ask questions, that we can chat. I don't want to just be like lecturing you for an hour. I want us to discuss Ayurveda, and because it's so much better when it's experienced together. So before we begin, does anyone have anything they want to say? Anything you want to pop on? Introduce yourself. Anything you're like dying to learn today, or do you want to just jump right in?
Did you hear this?
Sorry, I did hear that. Okay.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. If you can't hear me, someone please say something. Yes, I can hear you. So actually, if you guys don't mind just muting yourselves for now, and then whenever we have a chance to collaborate and to chat, then you can go ahead and just unmute you. So this is being recorded. There's a good bit of people who can't make the live call, so this will go out in the recording, so just be mindful of that. If you ask any questions that you don't want sent out in a recording to a bunch of other people, maybe those would be better private questions, but other than that, please do share. So we're gonna jump right in. So most of you know me. I don't know all of you though, so in case we haven't met, my name is Lillian. This is my dog Mac, and I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm an Ayurvedic health coach and a hormone health coach. I work one-on-one with clients as well as leading group programs and seasonal cleanses. I've been living Ayurvedically, whatever that means, because it's kind of it's a flux and it's always an evolving practice, but I've been living Ayurvedically for about 11 years now. I found Ayurveda in my very first yoga teacher training and jumped right into the deep end. And it's allowed me a lot of freedom actually in my life. So it's allowed me to ditch the diet culture mentality completely and food restrictions. I feel like I can choose how to take care of myself from a really empowered and expansive place rather than a restrictive place. It's allowed me to stabilize my weight, to clear up my skin, to clear up my digestive issues, improve my energy, balance my moods. I mean, once I really learned how to be in communication with my body and in communication with the seasons, just this whole new world of wellness opened up for me. And it has been such a life-changing practice for me that I am fully inspired and motivated to help empower others to live this way as well, because I really think that this is the way. So moving on, for those of you who are new to Ayurveda, I know some of you have been with me for a long time and have been in lots of my programs. Others of you, this may be the very first time that you're hearing the word Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, literally translated, means the science of life. Ayur means science, Veda means life. Ayurveda gives us a framework to understand ourselves, how we can eat, live, breathe, sleep, exercise, move, based on what's going on in the world around us. So it's not a really restrictive protocol. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think that's one of the most amazing things about Ayurveda is that it really teaches and believes that every single person needs something different at different times. And so it teaches you how to use the framework of Ayurveda to understand what your body needs at this particular time. And then what we're going to talk about today is Ritucharya, or seasonal habits. So in Ayurveda, we have habits are really big. In Ayurveda, we have Dinacharya, which is your daily habits, and then we have Ritucharya, which is your seasonal habits. And different seasons of the year require different things from our bodies, and so we have to balance them differently. And so with the practice of Ritucharya, or seasonal habit change, we start to change the way that we exist in the world, the way that we schedule our day, the way that we eat, the way that we exercise, what our priorities are based on the season, so that we can stay balanced and well. So I want you guys to go ahead and grab a notebook. So I want you to start to first think about it in this way. So I'd love you to grab a notebook and start to jot down a few things. So the first thing I want you to jot down, I'm going to ask a few of you to share, is what words you use to describe the fall. And then once you've got that, if you could either pop in those words in the chat, or you're welcome to just unmute and kind of just start to blurt out a few words. Either way is perfect. Let's see. Ooh, from the UK, amazing. Okay, so Charlotte says she loves how cozy fall feels. Cozy. Anything else? Any other words that you would use to describe the fall? And if you guys are heavier, interesting, fresh, new, crisp, great. And those of you guys who are watching the recording later, I really do recommend like jotting down what words you use to describe the fall, because that's going to start to dictate what your reaction, like how your body is experiencing the fall, because it may be different than the next person. Fresh, new, crisp. Anyone else? How about your favorite things about fall? What are your favorite things about fall? And you can put it in the chat box, or you can unmute and chat. Exciting. I feel like fall is exciting too. I love exciting for fall. Beautiful colors, yes, for sure. The temperature, I love the temperature of fall too, because there's a temperature drop, usually. Anyone else? Any other favorite things about fall? How about your least favorite things about fall? The drop in temperature, the freshness of fall. Yeah, fall does feel fresh. Anyone else? What's your least favorite things about fall? Or maybe, Suzanne, maybe the drop in temperature was your least favorite. Dry. Oh, hi, Erin, you snuck in. The fall of leaves is your least favorite thing. The dryness, also least favorite thing. Okay, you prefer it cooler. And now, thinking about it, think about how you feel in the fall. Like, do you feel like, oh, energetically, you're feeling the pressure of the fall? Fall leaves, the fall of leaves is your favorite. Gotcha. So the fall of leaves is the favorite. Some people feel like energetic pressure from fall because holidays are coming. I want you guys to think now about your body. Like, how does your body react to the fall? How do you feel in the fall? And everyone, there's no right answer to this at all. This is just about you starting to get in this discussion with yourself. Adjusting to the change of temperature. Is that like a good adjustment? Does that feel good in your body, or does that feel kind of hard? And you guys can speak too. It's just a change. Yeah, you're right. It is a change. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because Vata is change. Okay, so someone else says that she feels lighter after the summer, like you can do things again. The summer, the like heat of the summer does have a heaviness to it. That's true. Anyone else? No? How about, what foods do you crave in the fall? I'm going to close this so we can see. What foods do you crave in the fall? No one craves anything?
Carbs.
Carbs. Okay, that's going to make sense in a minute. That's going to make a lot of sense. Yes. Squash and zucchinis. Baked potatoes. Okay. Soup.
Pasta. Cookies. Apple pie.
All of the heavy sweet foods, right? Yeah, totally. Anyone else? And those cravings make a lot of sense. As we get into it, we're gonna understand why we crave those heavier, sweeter foods in the fall. Let's see, something else. Hot drinks, same, yeah. Yep, to kind of balance the warmer or the colder temperatures. Okay, how does your body feel in the fall? We've already kind of chatted about that. So does anyone have anything else they want to put in, or shall we keep going? All right, so kind of remember with some of these qualities, the way that we're reacting, the way that we're craving things in the fall as we move on. And let me close this. Alrighty. Okay, so Ayurvedically speaking, what's happening in the fall? In order to understand this, we need to go over a quick refresher of the doshas. So some of you may understand the doshas quite well already. Others of you, this may be a new concept. So the three Ayurvedic doshas are the three energies that basically govern the world around us. They're all three present in our body. They're present in the atmosphere. They're present in the weather. They're present in everything. And then certain doshas will be stronger at different times of the year, stronger within our body. Predominantly Vata, got it, perfect. So, oopsies, wrong way with that. Okay, so the three doshas, the first dosha is Vata. So Vata is made up of air and ether. The qualities that we are referring to when we're talking about dosha is light, dry, mobile, and cold. And then we have Pitta. Pitta is fire. Pitta is governed by fire and a little bit of water, but it's like a hot, humid water, not a cool, clear water. And the qualities, so when we're talking about things that are Pitta, we're talking about them being hot, sharp, oily, and spreading. Kapha. So Kapha is earth and water. It's a little bit of a different water than that Pitta water. It's a little bit of like a heavier, kind of like cooler type of water. Kapha is heavy, it's dense, it's dull, and it's cold. And so we kind of have this baseline framework for this. And then when we're thinking about the doshas, the elements, or the qualities, we're working with these two cardinal rules of Ayurveda, which are like attracts like and opposites balance. So if you add more cold to cold, you're going to create something that's colder. And if you add hot to cold, you're going to create something that's lukewarm, somewhere in the middle. Or like I know Tammy was mentioning all of the heavier, sweeter foods that she craves in the fall, such as like apple pie and pasta. Those would be considered heavy foods. And you were all describing the lightness and the crispness of the fall, which would be an opposite right there. So we have light and heavy. Does that make sense? I know that for many of you, this is just a refresher. And if you do want like a deep dive into the doshas, I do have an hour-long course just on the doshas that goes way into this. Yes, makes sense. Thank you. Let me figure out how I can get that smaller. There we go. All right. Anyone have any questions on this before we move on? All right. So going on to fall. Fall is Vata season. Vata is made up of air and ether. And as I said a moment ago, the qualities of Vata are light, dry, they're mobile, subtle, and they're cold. So a lot of this is kind of what you guys were describing when you were talking about fall, you know, the lightness, the crispness, the change of the temperature. Vata, anytime there's change or movement, there's Vata, because Vata is responsible for movement. So fall or Vata season is generally characterized as dry, windy, and with fluctuating temperatures, right? Like it can be really cold and then it can be really hot and then it can be really cold again. That type of weather is going to start to impact our body. Those of us who are predominantly Vata, so we all have Vata in our constitution, but those of us that have more Vata in our constitution, we're going to feel even more of these Vata effects as they come into the season. So as they're in the weather. And then let's see what this is. You wake up early in the autumn, you love autumn walks. And yeah, that's all that lightness. That lightness is, you need heaviness to stay asleep. And so since Vata, its quality is light, it can be a little bit harder to sleep. Now there's always a gray area. So we're in the end of summer, the beginning of fall. And I say we haven't gotten to the, I think that the fall equinox is on the 22nd. So we're not quite there, but we're almost there. If you're on the East Coast, you're probably feeling a lot more fall already than those of us here in LA are. We're not feeling a lot of fall yet, although I started to see it yesterday. So we're in like a little bit of a gray area time here where we've got a lot of Pitta, a lot of Vata going on. And it's really, really important to take care of your health during this time. So, so important as a preventative health measure. And we're going to talk more about why. So let's talk about how to recognize Vata in our bodies, because as we move into the Vata season, we're going to start to see more Vata characteristics probably within our bodies. And as I always describe the doshas, they're either your greatest strength or your greatest weakness, and they can be both. They're not just one or the other. In balance, they're strengths. So there's a lot of really great things that we can take from this Vata season, but there's going to be some weaknesses too. There's also some predisposition to some health imbalances during this season that we need to be aware of. So in balance, Vata in our body is spontaneous. It's playful. It's creative. It's artistic. It's joyful, social, inspired, energetic. So, think about that. If you have a Vata in your life, or if you yourself are the Vata, you're the one who's like kind of always making the social plans. You're like, oh, I just heard about this great concert. Let's go to this. Oh, you know what? I actually decided to take a impromptu weekend trip. I'm no longer there. Like just kind of all over the place, and lots of fun and very outgoing energy is a very Vata energy. Vata is very spiritual as well. So like think about like your yogis that you have in your life, or your breath workers, or your your healers. There's probably a lot of Vatas in that space. Physically, so in your body or in other people's bodies, we can see Vata in your primary constitution with long limbs. So Vata generally will have like long legs and shorter torso, long arms, something like that. Vatas tend towards being thin. They may even have a hard time gaining weight or keeping weight on, and that you may see some protruding joints. I say that with like a caveat, because you don't have to be thin to be a Vata predominant person, and sometimes we can mistype because of that. But there that like protruding joints, or someone who has like really kind of like knuckly hands, like all of that would be quite Vata. Vatas are generally shorter or taller than average, and it's hard to say what average is. So generally you want to think about like your family, so if you're way taller than anyone in your family or way shorter than anyone in your family, that may be like a little knock towards you've got a good bit of Vata in your constitution. A brown or a gray tint to the skin, and also like really tan. So you know how sometimes there'll be someone that's just a lot tanner than the rest of their family or the rest of their peers. That could also be a Vata characteristic in your physical structure. And then curly or thin hair. So that's also quite Vata, as well as brown eyes. Does anyone have any questions, or are you like looking at the imbalance qualities and like, oh my goodness, I think I'm very Vata? Feel free to unmute to chat and share. You do have long arms and very curly hair. Yeah, and it's important to remember too that we're a specific makeup of all of the three doshas. So we may see some Vata within us, but we may also have some Pitta and some Kapha, and they can all be stronger at different periods in the time in the year, and as well as like in our life cycle. And so it's important to remember, I like to pay attention to the imbalance and the out of balance characteristics of Vata as we move into Vata season, so that you can kind of see the way that the fall is impacting, the Vata in just kind of in your daily life. So has anyone felt like as fall comes, they maybe feel a little more spontaneous or a little bit more like creative, like you have a little bit more motive to try something new, or to go out to that show, or to socialize, something like that? Anyone?
Lillian, I do feel that way, but I've never attributed it to the doshas. I've always attributed it to relief from the summer heat, because I'm in the southeast. So
Yeah.
we are very oppressed by humidity here. So once the humidity lifts, so I feel like if the humidity lifted in July, I would still feel that relief, even though it was Pitta season. So can you explain a little bit my misinterpretation or something there?
It's not a misinterpretation at all. It's just two different ways of looking at it. So pitta season, pitta is fire and water. So humidity that you're talking about is that it's like that hot water. That's pitta right there. And that does become very heavy. And so we do kind of get like, oh, it's too much. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And so if the water element left, if the humidity left, and you had the dryness come in, that would be vata. Vata is dryness. So you would, even if that happened in July, you would have pitta vata then entering.
Gotcha.
And this is something I talk about with my LA clients all the time, is that I think we here in LA, we kind of we follow a different seasonal structure, because we have like, it's pretty much like hot year round, and then we have fire season, which is really pitta vata. It's wind on the heat. And so yes, you're describing the vata qualities. If vata were to come in, then you would start to feel more of those vata qualities. You'd be a little more balanced and more comfortable there.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? Did I? Yeah.
Good question. I thought that if it were summer, it was pitta and only pitta, period, end of statement. I didn't realize that there could be fluctuation within what was traditionally considered to be a certain season's dosha.
Yeah, everything, so the doshas is just a way of talking about the elements, which is just a way of talking about the qualities. And so it's all changing, and we're all evolving with that. And so it's just kind of a way of understanding. So yeah, like pitta season doesn't end at a specific time. It really ends or starts to transform into vata season when the weather changes. And so again, your vata season is going to start at a different time than my vata season does.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. All right. Skin gets very dry. Yeah. Feels like you start to wake up. You have been feeling more energetic and spontaneous. Awesome. Yeah. These are all like little hints of vata coming. I put this up on my Instagram a minute ago, but I went out on a walk yesterday and it was windy. Like that breeze felt so good because it has been oppressively hot in LA. And as that wind came in, because we know vata is wind, vata is air and it moves. I was like, oh my goodness, vata, there you are. I was so happy to see the wind. So it does start to trickle in, and it does lighten up that heaviness that we get at the end of pitta season. And now vata is great, and that spontaneous, that artisticness, that creative joyfulness that we get from vata season is all things to celebrate. But it can also go out of balance. And so when it's out of balance, and these are things I want you to watch out for in your own body, and we're going to learn ways to balance them in a minute. You may notice that you're spacey. So vata out of balance would be extra spacey, would be anxious. So especially like feelings of anxiety or fearfulness, maybe not even if that's not totally your norm, or if anxiety is your norm, if it just kind of kicks up a notch. Being really scattered. So one of my favorite ways to describe vata is like if you're holding your keys and you're searching around your house like frantically for your keys, vata's at play. And I always use that example because I always do that when my vata is out of balance. I can't find anything and I'm always holding on to whatever it is I'm looking for. Being really distracted. Or frazzled. So like if you've ever had a conversation with someone and you ask them a question and they answer 5 other questions, but never really the question you asked, vata, that's vata. Insomnia, like I said, light sleep is a heavy activity. So where there's increased lightness, there's increased vata, we may start to experience insomnia. Constipation as well, because one of the qualities of vata is dry. And so constipation would be dryness in the digestive tract, which may be one of the very first early warning signs of vata being off balance that you would absolutely want to pay attention to. And then dry, itchy, red skin, like skin rashes or just, eczema, psoriasis, like dry cracking skin, all of that is also an early warning sign of vata out of balance. Does anybody have any? That's you. Got it. Anybody have any questions about any of that or any thing they want to share? All right. Yeah. So struggles with sleep. A vata type, someone who's predominantly vata may already be connecting to these out of balance vata qualities. If you are not, if you're predominantly kapha, predominantly pitta, you may not be feeling these yet. You may not feel them at all. That's my wish for you, but they would be things that you would want to watch out for during the vata season, because we're a little more predisposed to these types of imbalances at that time. All right.
I find that I'm sort of like, my emotions are very much all over the place at the moment, and that seems to have keyed into as the weather's starting to change. Although I prefer autumn and winter, I'm quite emotional. I'm either really, really happy or feel really, really low. I don't feel balanced at the moment. I feel out of sorts.
Yeah, that's vata. So again, what's happening in our external environment is going to be happening in our internal environment, because like attracts like and opposites balance. And so kind of that erraticness to the emotions that you're describing is, you could also use that to describe the weather. It gets hot and then it gets cold. You're like, I'm super happy and I'm super anxious and frazzled and upset. And like, I don't really know why, I'm all over the place. And that could be being exacerbated a bit with the change of the seasons and with that the vata weather incoming. Of course, there's lots and lots of other factors that could be at play as well. What's happening in your body, what's been happening in the past year, how has the pitta season been like? So I can't give an easy answer to that, but the changing of emotions is similar to the changing of weather, and any type of change in instability would be attributed to vata. And so a lot of these, especially the lifestyle habits that we're going to go over in a minute, might be really nice for you.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else have anything they want to share before we move on? Check that chat again. All right, let's keep moving on. I'm loving that I'm hearing from you guys, so please don't hesitate to share. So as we've kind of been talking about, fall is especially tricky for a few reasons. The fall weather begins at much different times in different locations. I know I've heard some of you who are like in the Southeast, it's probably already fall. I have some friends that are in the mountains, and they've already been getting like, below 60, low 50 temperatures. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I would love that. Fall weather is super erratic, so we change our diet. We pull out the winter clothes for like this colder weather, and all of a sudden we have an 85-degree day. And what do? And that kind of erraticness can be really hard on our body as well. Another reason that especially Ayurveda focuses on fall so much is because pitta, or the fire element, is already increased in your body by the time fall rolls around. And that's because we've been for months now living in hot weather. And as we're living in hot weather, our pitta, our fire, is going to increase and increase and increase. And this is going to set the stage for a pitta vata imbalance. So pitta and vata together, they can be like the best of friends, and they can, a pitta vata can be really driven, really creative, really motivated. It can be a really wonderful combination. Or they can be like two little bullies on the playground, just kind of, beating up at you. So pitta vata imbalanced can cause a lot of issues in our body. So what happens is, in the summer, as it gets really, really hot, think about what fire does to things. And really, California and our fire season is a great example for this. So when fire like burns up, it dries you up, right? And it just kind of makes everything scorched and a little bit burnt. And it's like the perfect terrain for a disaster to happen. And so we saw this last week in California, where everything was really dry, totally fire season. We haven't had any rain. We've just had heat for months and months and months. And then wind and rain comes, and you've got these crazy winds that spark wildfires, and you've got rain that creates mudslides. It's like the perfect storm. And unfortunately, we can have a little bit of that perfect storm in our body as well if we're not in a place where we're balancing our pitta and we're balancing our vata. If we allow things to stay hot, and then we add more dryness, more wind, more erraticness as the vata season comes, then we can have some issues in the body. And I'm going to tell you some of those early warning things. So signs that you'd want to look out for in your body that, things are a little bit off as we're in Pitta Vata season would be constipation. So an early warning sign for Ayurveda is always going to be what's happening with your digestion, what's happening with your poop. That's basically what's telling us what's going on in your body. So dryness, that constipation is going to be Vata, but we also know that too much fire is going to dry things up too. So it could be a little bit of Vata or Vata Pitta. And then what I hear also quite often is that this time of the year, you may be alternating constipation and diarrhea, which is the dryness and the fire, right? The Pitta and the Vata. And so those would be an early warning sign that your body is asking for some balancing. Feeling frazzled, fried, and burnt out. And this can be physically as well as mentally. So I know I hear that by like this time, it's like, oh my gosh, we can't handle any more heat, can't handle anything else. That feeling of being like physically just burnt out and fried, perhaps like a little bit more short-tempered than you may normally be. But you may also be feeling that like burnt out, fried feeling physically. Like maybe you're like, you just feel a little hotter. That feeling where you feel a little hotter in your skin and you don't really know why because you don't have a temperature. That's just some internal heat being built up. And then the Vata comes in and it's blowing wind on that fire that's already there. Dry, itchy skin rashes like eczema, psoriasis, or just like any type of red breakout that spreads and moves. Anything that's going to be dry and red on the skin is going to be Pitta and Vata. So those would be signs your body is asking for some balance this time of the year. An insatiable appetite or an erratic appetite, or both. Unfortunately, I've been dealing with both lately, where I'm like so hungry for hours and then I'm not really hungry at all. That's going to be some Pitta Vata right there. Acid reflux would be another one that you would want to look out for. And, none of these are to scare you. These are just to empower you so we can start to see the things that are happening in our body and not ignore them. If we balance them right now, and we're going to get into balancing how to balance them soon. If we balance them now, these early warning signs aren't going to progress into anything further. I see something in the chat. Does anyone have any questions? It's like I'm describing you. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I mean, as Pitta Vatas, it happens. Yeah. Anyone, any questions, anything you want to share? Should I keep moving on?
Any hormonal changes?
So that's a tricky question. So, your hormones for women, your monthly cycle is basically a report card of how your health has been for the month. And so if you're seeing hormonal changes, perhaps you're getting like increased headaches around your period, that would be more Pitta. Perhaps your period is longer, or like the days between your cycle would be longer, or your period is lighter, that would be more signs of a Vata. These that I'm giving you are kind of the early warning signs, the things you want to catch. Like if we catch constipation, hopefully it's not going to progress into something hormonally, So you could absolutely be seeing hormonal changes, but they're not ones that are super common or they're not ones that I would have you be looking out for. Cause I think like noticing the constipation or something with your appetite or something on your skin is a little bit easier to catch.
What about in men? In men for testosterone?
I don't know the answer to that. I focus all of my hormone work with women. So sorry, but I don't have a good answer at all. I wish I did. But the same thing I would think with your hormones would be when I look at hormonal issues with women, and when we take this from an Ayurvedic perspective, we always start at the digestion, because a healthy digestion is going to set the stage for healthy nutrient assimilation and healthy blood production. And it's those two things that then are going to filter down the whole body system and create healthy hormones. So I would still say to look back at things like acid reflux, constipation, appetite. Does that answer your question? I'm going to take silence as golden, but yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you on men's
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any tips to balance hormones? Yes, I've got lots of tips to balance hormones, but that's a totally different topic. So email me because I could then now go on a tangent for another hour. But like I just explained, we always have to start at the digestion, and that's really what we're going to do here. Is we're going to, for your hormones to come into balance, for everything to come into balance, our digestion has to be running properly. Okay. Alrighty, you guys, let's keep going. So what do we do, right? We've kind of like set the stage for, okay, things could be happening as we transition to the fall. And there's so much now that we can do. And this is why I love Ayurveda, is it's so empowering. So first, let's talk about how to eat, because we do want to start to transition our diet a bit as we move into the fall. And, you know, I expressed earlier that Ayurveda is really a non-restrictive diet. And so I don't want you to see any of these food recommendations as all or nothing. Even if you can do this 80% of the time, 70% of the time, 50% of the time, your body will thank you. You know, it will start to make a difference. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and it's never black and white. So as we move into the Vata season, it's really important for Vata that we're favoring warm and cooked foods. Vata, because it's dry and light and rough, it has a hard time with foods that are dry and light and rough, because that creates more dryness. And raw foods, even like salads, are considered dry, light, and rough. We also want to favor foods with the naturally sweet taste. So that doesn't necessarily mean the pasta and the apple pie, but that does then make sense why we're craving that in the fall, because the sweetness is going to balance both pitta and vata, which is what we're experiencing right now. But we want to shift to some foods that are a little bit more naturally sweet, and I'll give you some examples in a minute. But the best natural place to find naturally sweet taste is with root vegetables. And think about all those fall squashes, like the delicata squash, the butternut squash, the acorn squash, the sweet potatoes. All of those are so nice and naturally sweet. And that's really what's going to start to balance the vata and the pitta this time of the year. And then favor foods that are naturally oily, but not too heavy, because again, we don't want to increase the heaviness that we feel from the pitta at the end of the summer. But we know that we have that dry, scorched landscape inside, right? Kind of like in California. So we want to like oil it up a bit, so things are a bit smoother, so that the wildfire or the mudslide, whatever that's going to translate to in your body, doesn't actually happen. Something in the chat. Pitta to avoid soup. No, I wouldn't agree with avoiding soup as a pitta. It really depends on what the ingredients are. So like a potato or a tomato based soup for pitta wouldn't be great, because both potatoes and tomatoes are very heating. But like a creamy carrot soup would be amazing for a pitta, or just like a big green vegetable soup, really wonderful. Soup would be spreading. I wouldn't consider soup spreading. When I think about spreading, you're thinking about like a skin condition, the way the skin condition kind of moves. But the liquid quality of the soup shouldn't aggravate pitta too much. I've personally never heard that. It would be, you would want to look again at the specific ingredients and make sure that the ingredients aren't pitta aggravating. But really, anytime I am seeing an imbalance, it generally begins in your digestion, and soup is such an easy to digest food. I find that it works for most people and for most doshas, as long as the ingredients are appropriate for the doshas. Does that make sense? Okay. And if you have more questions about that, feel free to pop them in the chat or just unmute and we can chat about that, but I'm going to keep moving for now. Yeah, okay, cool. Oops, I keep pressing the wrong button there on the chat. All right. So top food choices for this season. And as I'm saying this season, I'm saying early fall. So these are all great food choices for the fall, and they're great food choices for right now, for the Pitta Vata season, because I want to give you stuff that you can like take to the farmer's market this weekend. So we want cooling oils. Like I said, we want to kind of smooth things out a little bit and smooth out the dryness without over without making things too heavy on the pitta. So your top oil choices are going to be ghee and coconut oil. Both ghee and coconut oil are wonderful for pitta and vata. They're wonderful for your gut. They're both cooling oils. So we know that things are dry and hot right now, and they're going to cool off the heat and they're going to moisturize the dryness. So if you're seeing things like constipation, perhaps playing with some more ghee or coconut oil in your diet could really help smooth things up, hopefully. So fruits for the season would be apples. So apples are amazing fall fruits. They're not, in LA, I haven't seen them totally in season yet, but they're coming soon. And I think those of you on the East Coast, you probably already have lots of fresh apples. Those are wonderful. Now, raw apples can be a little bit too astringent, a little bit too dry for a vata type. So if you know you're very vata and you deal with a lot of constipation and a lot of bloating, I would recommend cooking your apples. And I actually, for everyone in the fall, once the temperatures get cold, I do recommend cooking your apples. I have in my fall cleanse guidebook, I have this recipe, and if anybody wants it, you can email it to me. You can email me and I'll send it to you. It's a recipe for like a stewed apple with chia seeds, and it's really like soothing to your gut. It's a really nice breakfast, but you're basically just boiling the apples so that they're a little easier to digest. And then my other favorite way to eat apples, which is so decadent and so amazing, is I fry my apples in ghee. And this is like such a delicious morning breakfast. You just do a little bit of ghee, and then you'll slice up your apples into pieces, fry it up so that it's really soft. Sprinkle a little cinnamon, cardamom, pinch of nutmeg on there. If you need a little bit of protein, I'll eat it sometimes with a sun butter. Oh, it's like the best fall winter meal right there. And you're going to be balancing the pitta and the vata. Let's see what's happening in the chat here. You love that too. Perfect. Yeah, you can bake your apples. Absolutely. Just throw them right in the oven. You're going to bake them. You can even like core them a little bit, put a little bit of ghee in. I mean, I'm just like, throw ghee on everything. It's great for you. Some cinnamon, some cardamom will lighten up some of the heaviness from that as well. Dates are also going to be really nice this time of the year. They're sweet and they're heavy, but they're not going to spike your blood sugar. The sugar release is quite slowly over time. Coconut is also really wonderful this time of year because it's so cooling. So it's going to cool pitta off. Figs, pomegranates are also really nice for pitta. So pomegranate would be a really nice one if you're still feeling some of those signs of residual heat. Bananas are also good, but you want to eat bananas alone. So bananas are going to be, because they're heavy and they're sweet. So the heaviness is going to balance the vata, the sweetness is going to balance the pitta. But because they're so high in sugar, you don't want to eat them with any other food. So you do want to make sure those are alone. And then the chat. Delicious. That looks so good. Let me see if I can get this small again. Alrighty. I'll leave that there. All right, so then leafy greens. So all type of leafy greens are really wonderful this time of year. I'm a huge fan of all of them. Any type of bitter leafy green is going to be cooling. So the bitter taste is naturally cooling. So again, any of that residual heat in our body is it's gonna help be pulled out with the leafy greens. So like chard, dandelion, those are like the top two right now that I can think of. I love chard right now because it has a slightly salty taste. I don't know if you've noticed that if you've sauteed chard. That like tiny little bit of salty taste is actually going to help balance the vata as well. So I find that to be a really nice one. Dandelion, kale is also great. That's a bitter. No, spinach is an interesting one because spinach is the only green that's actually not cooling, but it's going to be heating. So if you're feeling really hot still, or it's still really hot where you are, perhaps wait for the spinach until it starts to get a little colder. But then the second that it gets colder, bring on the spinach. That's going to be a great one. All leafy greens, next, grains. So basmati rice is a really nice one. Basmati rice is naturally sweet. And so that natural sweet taste is going to be really good for the pitta and the vata, and it's not going to be too heavy on your digestive system. Quinoa is a good one. Oats are a good one too. So oats, so anything that you're digesting, or I'm sorry, anything that's happening on your digestive system or on your outside skin is a reflection of what's happening in your digestive system. So our skin is a mirrored reflection of our digestive tract. And so I always love to use oats as an example, because like, remember when you had like chicken pox as a kid or something, then you would do like an oat bath. You know, oats are really soothing. They can kind of pull out the burn, like pull out the itch a bit. And so one of the conditions we may see with the Pitta Vata in excess is, you know, some increase in some type of skin conditions. And so oats can be really soothing to your gut. So I do really like oats in the Pitta Vata season. If you're going to do legumes, mung beans are great, red lentils, both of those small beans are going to be easy to digest, so they're not going to increase too much rough. Sometimes a vata has a hard time with too much rough, or if there's a lot of vata in the weather around us, beans can be a little bit rough, but the mung beans and the red lentils are great. And as I mentioned a minute ago, root vegetables, so beets, carrots, turnips, parsnips, all of those vegetables are really naturally sweet. And that sweet taste is going to add a little bit of heaviness, a little bit of grounding to balance the cold and the light and the dryness that we're experiencing in the Vata season. Your winter squashes, fall squashes are also great too, because those are naturally sweet. Now spices. We want to be careful with spices, because we do want to spice up our food so that it increases the digestibility. A little bit more spice in your food is going to be helpful for Vata, but too much spice, too much heat is going to add some extra heat for Pitta. So you want to stay with spices that are kind of middle of the road. Fresh ginger is really, really wonderful for both Pitta and for Vata. Cardamom is an amazing spice for Pitta, and it's also a great spice for Vata. So you can use cardamom on, if you're drinking coffee, definitely throw cardamom in your coffee. If you make any type of a breakfast, you know, a sweet type of breakfast, throw some cardamom on that. If you're making a tea, crush some cardamom pods, make a tea with it. Or actually what I did yesterday was I made like a big cardamom tea. So I used like 7 or 8 crushed cardamom pods, put it in a big pot of boiling water. And then I let the water come down to room temperature and I drank it all day. You can do the exact same thing with fennel seeds. Fennel is also going to be very cooling. If you're dealing with things like acid reflux or acid feelings in the stomach, fennel is a really nice spice to add into your diet to play with there. And it's also going to increase the digestibility of foods for Vata as well. And same as the cardamom, you can use the fennel, make it into a tea and drink it. You can play with, you know, you could do ginger, cardamom, fennel. That would be a great tea. Sometimes I'll even do just cardamom and fennel by themselves. Those two are nice teas to drink as well. So anything you can cook with, you can also make as a tea if you just want to up the ante a little bit. Turmeric is also really wonderful because it is really balancing for Pitta. It can be like a little bit drying, but it's perfect for this time of the year for Pitta, and it's going to pull some of that heat out of your body. So just throwing turmeric on your food wherever you can think to throw it on, it's a great time this time of the year. Or if you're like making a big soup, maybe you get the actual turmeric root, chop it up into pieces and throw some turmeric root into your soup. That could be really good too, and a nice way to bring some Pitta balance into a soup. Any questions on this?
Lillian, I have a question about the lentils.
Yeah.
You specifically say red lentil. What would be the opposition to green or French or?
To those either, they're fine. They're small and little. I for some reason always think of red lentils as a little bit easier to digest than the green or the brown, but that could just be my personal body. So there's no problem. The rule is kind of the smaller the bean, the easier it is to digest.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Someone's at my door. Sorry, I don't know why. All right, we're gonna keep moving. So
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have a general question, if it's okay to chime in.
Please, yeah.
I'm just curious how you guys, what's your feeling with the CBD?
Yeah, so I don't know the Ayurvedic answer to CBD because it wasn't around when Ayurveda
I
was
see.
Originated. Personally, I love CBD. I think it's great. You want to be very careful how you source it and make sure that, you know, it's well sourced, and organic. I think it's an interesting question because as we move into Vata season, anxiety and feelings of ungroundedness are definitely going to increase because those are Vata types of imbalance. So I actually think CBD is a very on topic type of question because it does help naturally ground your body and ease some of the anxiety. So I personally don't have a problem with it at all. And I use it. Any other questions there?
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty. So top foods to avoid. Your top 2 foods to avoid right now are going to be alcohol and caffeine. It doesn't mean like never, but both of these are going to be very drying and very heating to your body. And we know that we're experiencing right now is a little bit of residual heat and some increased dryness. So those 2 are kind of, you know, no-nos. When I say caffeine, I mean especially coffee. If you're like can't live without your morning cup of something caffeinated, even if you could switch to a matcha green tea, that would make a huge difference. Hot sauce, because that heat is going to aggravate pitta, and then as we increase more heat in our body, it's going to dry things up. It's like turning the dial up on the fire and things get drier and drier, so that we're setting the stage for Vata imbalance to increase. And pittas generally love to put hot sauce in everything. And I say that from experience. Like if I could put sriracha on literally all of my food, I would. Deep fried foods are also going to be very, very pitta aggravating. And that heat we know is going to then increase the Vata later on too. Peanuts and cashews, because they're so heating. I say in excess, like if you're going to have a little bit in a dip or a dressing here or there, that's fine. But if you're eating them all day, every day, I would pause, as well as fermented foods. So this is a sneaky one. I see a lot of people eating a lot of fermented foods and drinking a lot of kombucha, and dealing with a lot of issues like bloating and gas and constipation or diarrhea. And it could just be because the fermentation is so heating. It's creating heat in the body. And like a kombucha is bubbly, so the bubbliness is going to be aggravating the Vata too. Raw food, so we mentioned that a minute ago, but Vata, so all of fall, you want to really, really minimize as much as you can the raw foods, like the salads. Those are going to be much harder to digest because they have the qualities of Vata.
Lillian, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Hi.
Quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned about nuts,
Mm-hmm.
Peanuts, almonds. What's your feeling in general about nuts? Because a lot of people in the health and fitness arena frown upon nuts. So how does it go with your yeah.
It depends on the quality of the food and the season you're in. So peanuts and cashews are technically legumes and they're heating. So in the end of summer, early fall, I would frown more upon those than something else. But like when you get into the late winter, something like a cashew that has that heat when it's been cold for a long time can be beneficial. So nothing is black and white. It's like nothing is all out or all in. It just kind of depends on when.
And what about almond milk and oat milk?
So almonds and almond milk are considered ojas building, which builds your immunity and your vitality. So those are actually loved in Ayurveda, in moderation. And almonds are actually cooling. So and create a lot of really nice nourishment. So almonds are great, actually. Almonds are going to be much easier to digest if they've been soaked. And then the almond milk, of course, homemade is always better because it doesn't have any of the gums, any of the additives, anything like that.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
well,
then,
thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And then I know you asked about oat milk too. Oat milk wasn't really around. Ayurveda is so old, so I kind of have to adapt my understanding of Ayurveda and the other holistic world into what's happening.
I'm assuming that that if eating oats now, oatmeal is good now, so oats would be good too. No, oatmeal.
I would say it's probably okay. I think the problem with oat milk is that it spikes your blood sugar. I still drink oat milk. I'm like, I just love it. So I think it's okay. I think that sometimes we just have to listen to our own bodies too. And if it feels okay for you and if it feels soothing and it's unaggravating, then sure, go for it.
Yeah, there is a good brand, Malk, that they have no additional additives, really.
Yeah,
So,
and I make my own. So I make mine. It's a combo of it's cashews, oats, and what else do I put in it? Almonds, and it's really delicious. So if you need that recipe, you can always email me for that too.
Maybe you can do once a workshop with making these things.
That's a great idea. I should do that. I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so anything homemade, if you're making it, then it's gonna have the prana. So it has the energy from the food. And I mean, even if we're like, okay, cashews are bad right now, but I'm going to make my own cashew milk. It has that living energy and it's going to be so much more beneficial for your body than that boxed almond milk, I believe. So I'm always a proponent of making your own stuff and just being happy with what you're eating. And good questions. And then light and dry foods. So foods like popcorn and crackers are also going to be very vata aggravating. I noticed like once vata season gets going and we all get a little more vata deranged, everyone's always eating popcorn. Like, and all of my vata clients are always like showing up on the video chat eating popcorn, which is just the most aggravating vata aggravating food ever. So if you totally love popcorn, maybe just ask yourself how vata are you and if you really need it. And if you're going to eat popcorn, when I eat popcorn, I douse it in ghee, which makes it taste so much better. And you're balancing the lightness there because you have that oily quality. So that's, that's how you can also kind of play with these rules a little bit is how do I balance things?
Is there a brand of ghee that you recommend?
So Farm True is a really great brand of ghee. They're based out on the East Coast. So I highly recommend them, and I can send you a code if you do want to order from them. I have a 15% off for my customers or my clients for them. So Farm True is really good. You're in Larchmont. So the Larchmont Village Farmers Market has that Astron Herbal. I buy their cultured ghee. I love their cultured ghee. I believe you're in Larchmont, right? I can't see who's talking. I'm just going on.
They don't have it in Erewhon, do they?
I don't think so. I think they're just at the farmer's market. The number one, so yeah, Farm True is a really good one. If you want to order online, I love their ghee and they treat their cows so wonderfully. Their processes are really, really good. You want to make sure with ghee that it's organic and that the cows are from grass-fed cows. So that's like your big number one thing. So like the Trader Joe's ghee, unfortunately, I can't stand behind because it's not grass-fed cows or organic. You want to be careful with that. Alrighty, And did you have another question?
Yeah, and you find ghee is better than butter?
Yes, absolutely, much better than butter. Yeah. Yeah, so ghee's been clarified. It's had the milk solids taken out. It's going to be much easier to digest on your body, and it's going to be a lot lighter as well. So I do much prefer ghee to butter.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Of course. Alrighty, yes. Oh, Astron Herbal is online too. Wonderful. And that's the one I was mentioning. They're at the Larchmont Farmers Market. There are quite a few farmers markets. There's some, for those of you who are in LA, they're on the west side too. Their cultured ghee is my favorite. So if you're at the farmer's market and you see that, I highly recommend their cultured ghee. I just bought like a huge jug of it for fall, and I'm going to get through all of it real soon. All right, so let's go through lifestyle tips and then we'll be done. I know we're a little almost at the hour, so I'm going to try to get through this, but I appreciate you guys asking your questions and keep asking. So lifestyle is just as important as what you eat. The most important thing for the early fall is to rest, to ground down and schedule in the rest if you need. So Pitta is a very like do, go type of dosha. So if you're very Pitta, you're like constantly doing, constantly going, constantly moving. And then Vata moves a lot too. It may move a little bit more erratically, but it really gets stimulated. And so these two doshas can be so stimulated at this time of the year, and we need to ground and we need to rest so that we're not feeling frazzled, so that we're not feeling anxious, so that we're not having mood swings, so that we can digest our food properly. So if there's one thing I can tell you to do in the fall is to make sure you are scheduling time to ground and to rest. It's also very important because fall again is erratic, right? Vata moves. So it's important that we have some stability in our routine because that is going to ground Vata. It's going to ground feelings of anxiety and it's going to improve your digestion if we stick to a stable bedtime and a stable mealtime routine. So if there's one thing you take out of this webinar, I would like you to decide what time your breakfast, lunch, and dinner is going to be for the whole season, what time you're going to go to bed, and what time you're going to wake up. And if you can stick to that and you stick to nothing else, you'll have won. So that's going to be just so very important for Vata season. And if you're a Vata, I know you probably have a ton of resistance to it because my Vata is like, no, I don't want to do that. Vata likes to be a bit more erratic, likes to fly by the seat of their pants, but it's much better to be on a routine and keep that Vata grounded. So oiling up, Abhyanga, which is a whole body oil massage. As the weather gets drier and drier in the Vata season, we need to make sure we're putting oil on our bodies to counter that dryness. Nasya oil, which is what I have pictured here, is a nose oil that you put in through the nose. I mentioned Farm True a minute ago. I love their Nasya oil. Theirs is my favorite that I found on the market. So if you're looking for some, you can order it from them. Feel free to reach out to me if you want a coupon code. Banyan Botanicals also has a great Nasya oil. So it's a little bit of oil that you lubricate your nasal passages with, as well as ear oil. And you can get that from Banyan Botanicals as well. So you just dip some it's like a medicated herbal oil that you put in each ear before you go to bed. And again, you're just bringing some oil and lubricating all of the areas that are going to be affected by the wind or by the Vata. If you don't have that much time to do a whole body oil massage, and I do have instructions for Abhyanga on my blog, on my website if you need that, then just oil your feet before bed. So find a coconut oil or a sesame oil or an almond oil or whatever oil you want to use and just put oil on your feet right before you go to sleep. And even that's going to be really grounding. A big one for fall is to please avoid skipping meals and please avoid fasting. That goes for like intermittent fasting, that goes for like all day fasting, that goes for detox diets where you're only drinking like juice or a liquid only. All of that is going to be very aggravating to Vata. And again, we want to kind of like baby Vata a little bit in this season and make sure that it doesn't go off balance so that we're feeling good. So it's important to eat 3 meals a day, to eat whole foods, and to keep taking your care of yourself in that way. And that's going to keep you feeling grounded. Exercise that moves energy downward, because both Vata and Pitta move up, which is why we feel spacey and frazzled and fried. So hiking, being out in nature, yoga, especially like yoga that really grounds down through the feet, like sun salutation, something that's kind of like strong with the downward energy, and qigong, very good exercises for this time of the year. Seasonal cleansing to remove excess pitta and to oleate, and I'll talk about that in a minute. This is one of the primary Ayurvedic practices, is a seasonal cleanse in the fall to prevent imbalance in your body. So before I go on and talk about that, does anyone have any questions about the lifestyle tips for early fall? They're pretty straightforward, but they're nice reminders. All right, I'm gonna hop on. So what's next? Fall seasonal cleanse. So we now understand what's happening. Whoopsies, we're going one. We now understand what's happening in our body during the fall. And so Ayurveda teaches that we cleanse in the fall and we cleanse in the spring to balance the doshas in these kind of transitional seasons where it's a little bit more likely that our body may go off balance, which is what we've spent the last hour talking about. So this 10-day program based on Ayurveda is specifically designed for a smooth transition from summer to fall. And in order to do that, we clear the pitta dosha from the body. So we focus on cooling foods, foods that are going to balance pitta. And then we oil up, we oleate our body to prevent vata imbalances. And we do that through our foods, through like a specific food protocol, as well as through some very specific lifestyle practices, such as, Abhyanga, full body massage. And so I do lead this every year. I've been doing this for years. It's my favorite thing. My favorite time of the year is when I lead these cleanses. My next one starts next Tuesday. I know some of you that are on this or have already cleansed with me in the past. Some of you are doing the one that starts this upcoming Tuesday. If you haven't, it's a very step-by-step, like 10-day program on exactly what to do. You get a pretty big guidebook from me. It's like 30 plus pages with tons of recipes designed to clear pitta dosha and to oil you up. And then we actually move into a khichdi mono diet, which is where we eat khichdi, which is what's pictured here, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 4 or 5 days, depending on how like gung-ho you are about it. And khichdi is the magical Ayurvedic meal. It balances the doshas. It's tridoshic. It's made with ghee so that it has that really nice oleating effect. But what happens when you mono diet, when you eat the same meal 3 times a day, is that you're actually giving your digestive system a break so that your body can start to do some of the deeper healing, deeper repairing, deeper balancing work that it needs to do. Now, we don't want to aggravate vata, so I don't want to tell you to do a fast. I don't want to tell you to do juice cleanse or anything like that. So this whole meal that we eat 3 times a day is going to keep vata balanced while still allowing your body to do the detoxification work that it needs when we kind of give the digestive system a break. I love khichdi too. Yeah. And so everyone who, when it's your first cleanse, you're kind of like nervous about like, oh my goodness, we're getting into the khichdi mono diet days. And I always hear this from people. They're like, this is delicious. So you get to eat this for 5 days. Like, it's pretty rad. And you get to eat vegetables with it, and spices, and it's really great. So for all of you who are on the cleanse, or I'm on this call, since you've made it this far, if you would like to join the cleanse, I would love to have you. You've got all of the background knowledge now for why you're going to do it or why you would do it. So today through Sunday, you can take $20 off the price using the code webinar. You can redeem it right here at this link, or I'll send you a link in a follow-up email after this. And then for an even extra motive, if you sign up by midnight tonight, I will give you a free 45-minute health coaching session, as long as you redeem it before the end of October. So you've got plenty of time to redeem it. And I find that people who meet with me and we get one-on-one individualized support during the cleanse, you're able to go so much deeper into the cleansing process and into that healing process. So if you have any lingering questions, if you want to talk through things that are going on in your body and how you may have need some individualized attention there, this would be a really great way to get it. And same, you would just sign up at this link, use the code webinar, and then if you sign up by tonight, then I will send you the link to book your 45-minute session. Other than that, I appreciate you guys so much for staying with me for an hour and 8 minutes. That is amazing. So thank you so much. And you guys have been wonderful. And so, asking all so many questions, which I really love. And I will stay on as long as I need to answer questions. But of course, if you need to go, I do want to respect your time. So feel free to pop up and you will get a follow-up email from me. But does anyone have any questions about the upcoming cleanse, about anything we talked about anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Anyone? Give it another minute or so, and then I will stop the recording. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you both. Suzanne, Stephanie, thanks.
Thanks, girl.
Thank you. Thanks for seeing. They're good to see you. Oh, that's you, Erin. Thanks for being here.
Just finished eating.
Sweet. I love it. Bye. Oh, good. I'm glad. All right, you guys. I'm glad it was informative. You can always reach out to me via email if you have any other questions. I am here. I'm going to stop the recording, but Let's see, how do I stop this? But I am around, so feel free to reach out. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys in the cleanse, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.